Welcome to today's episode of Embracing Hormones. Do you, like me, and I think like many of us, sometimes find yourself in a state of overwhelm, maybe even a little anxiety and stress? I can put my hand up to that some afternoons when the list seems really long. Maybe the sleep hasn't been great the night before, and it's a terrible feeling, and sometimes it actually stops me cold from doing anything. So if you're like me, you are going to learn so much from my dear friend and guest who is joining us today, Claire Kumar. Let me say hello, Claire, and then I'm going to give you a proper introduction.
Hi, Camille. I'm so happy to spend time with you and your listeners. Hello, everyone.
So glad that you're here. Claire brings a wealth of wisdom, experience. She's not only my friend, but she's my mentor on many of our long walks. So let me give you the right introduction for her. She is a productivity catalyst and a highly sensitive executive coach, international speaker. She examines, get this, the intersection between productivity and inclusivity. She inspires individuals to design for well-being and cultivate sustainable performance while avoiding exhaustion and burnout. And Claire, that's a big topic for my community because we talk a lot about stress and burnout and how to avoid it. And I know you've got some great tips on that. She encourages leaders to co-create the future of their work with all their teams while respecting neurodiversity and humanity. I love that. This is a topic that Claire explores as the host of her Happy Space podcast. She has a diverse corporate career spanning all sorts of the globe, and she has been an award-winning entrepreneur. She's been seen on CBC, Fast Company, Globe and Mail, Marilyn Dennis Show, and the list is long. So, Claire, welcome to the Embracing Hormones community.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Camille.
Let's dive right in. I want to just find out from I always get caught up in, is it the day-to-day kind of small things that stop us? Or I often say to my counseling clients, should we look at the 50,000 foot view and kind of dial it down as to what we can do? Where do we begin when we're talking about a topic so big?
Great question. And I think it's both, not to want to make things complicated right from the start. But I have a model I call productivity CPR. And CPR is all about reviving your performance. But CPR in my world stands for something different than cardiopulmonary resuscitation. You've got to have your intention setting, your compass. C is for compass. You've got to have an ability to bring your attention to your intentions. So compass is about setting intention. P is performance. It's about bringing your attention to those intentions. And then R is rituals. This is where we're optimizing our execution. And when we can look at intention, attention, and execution and really have some strategies to help guide the way we're going to be and navigate with our spaces, our calendars, our society, then we can figure out and hone, I would say, always move a little closer to what feels comfortable is the goal, because what's comfortable is what you're likely going to hold on to. So it's all those things. It's the compass is the 50,000 foot, and the execution is knowing what to do in the moment.
Yeah, and what I really hear from that I think is the piece that I may miss, and I'm sure some of our followers do, is it is really with intention, isn't it? Like, it's not just going to happen. I think I have been in fact, I could show you all my sticky notes, but I won't. I have the idea, I think like many of us, Claire, that if I write it down we've been taught that. So I make my lists and I write it down that's going to be enough to kind of make me productive, but it doesn't.
Well, you know what? Yeah, there's some science just on that some of us think that just writing it down feels like we've done it, and therefore we might not even actually continue on to actually do the thing because writing it down felt so good.
That's exactly right. Oh, I do love that. So it's about intention. It's about taking the time to sort of consider. And I love what you also said about what is comfortable for you, because what works for one person, of course, doesn't always work for the next person. So,
Yeah, I have a hashtag I use a lot on social media, and I even made what I call inclusivities. That's a line of t-shirts which show you show off your values, and one of them is productivity is personal. So hashtag productivity is personal is a real invitation to honor who you are and how you work.
so would that fit into some of us who like a 10-minute afternoon siesta, for example?
Yeah, absolutely. And that is honoring the attention management piece, right? That's a performance productivity way of being, a productivity strategy, because our circadian rhythm dips at around 2:30 in the afternoon. Normally, we're going to feel a lull in energy. And while Kit Kat would want you to buy some chocolate, caffeinate, and sugar up, maybe what you actually need is to allow yourself a brain cleanse. The brain can cleanse in as little as 3 minutes. Salvador Dali used to do an experiment where, well, not an experiment, a practice where he would sit in his chair with a key in his hand. And when he would nod off, the key would drop and wake him up. And even that had some benefits to helping his brain and helping be function. But I'm all for it. Lie down, commit. Don't have to commit to sleeping, but stop the incoming stimulation to the nervous system and invite some rest and recovery.
I love that. That's very permission based, and thank you. That really ties in, Claire. As you know, I do a lot of work with women and hormones in particular, and I spend a lot of time talking about the effects of cortisol, our stress hormone, and stress. And I know that falls right into your area too of expertise. What I find is that many of us are stopped almost cold because we're feeling that overwhelm. And it's really, for many of us, that cortisol is up here 24/7 in our current, way of living, when it's supposed to follow, as you said, the nice rhythm, and then that lower, later afternoon supposed to come down and allow us to rest at night, come up in the morning slowly. Well, for a lot of us, it's up here all the time. And so our sleep at night is very disrupted because now our adrenal glands are busy making cortisol, churning out the cortisol. And it shows up, I think, in many of us, including myself, in that afternoon time when I am feeling overwhelmed. My list on my sticky note is long still. And then I just okay, I'm going to go have a little nap, but I feel guilty. And so I'm liking that you're giving us permission, that if that's what we need, because I also think that helps balance the cortisol, and hence too much cortisol for too long, that's what leads to the burnout. And part of your work is helping us avoid that, right?
Yeah, exactly. So absolutely, it's about giving yourself permission to honor your physiology. My degree was biology, and so
No, I don't think I knew that. Oh,
yeah, yeah. So I was grounded in science and a love of understanding humans and our physiology, psychology, and so on. So 15 years in telecom, it didn't make a lot of sense. It wasn't relevant, but it really is now in what I talk about. And I think our society, especially in North America, but in other places around the world too, we really reward grit, hustle, perseverance, pushing through. And also, thanks to probably Amazon and some other businesses in the world that give us an expectation that we should have immediate gratification. I think this builds on a false sense that good customer service is being 24/7 and having messages pop up and being responsive. Well, I'm doing some research now in something I call the work style profile, which is actually asking people what their preference is for response time. What would they like to do in non-urgent communication? How would they, what would they like to respond? And what I'm trying to do is bring down this level of feeling like we need to be always on, to be able to partition our day so that we can have periods where we're engaged, interactive, but periods where we're focused, periods of time where we're resting, and periods of time where we're just, doing the maintenance on our homes and selves and spaces and relationships that is required. And we have to figure it out so that we can relax and allow ourselves to really rest when we want to rest, to be off and to not feel like, oh my gosh, there are 50 things I need to be doing. I've probably forgotten something. And you probably have if you're allowing that much interruption and feeling like you need to respond. You're probably dropping things because your attention is going to be fractured. You're not going to be thinking as calmly. If we're frazzled, we're not focused.
Absolutely, that is true. And I know I think, overuse the word balanced life, but that's really what, yeah, well, but that's what you're talking about. I mean, and in my world, it's balanced hormones as well. Like, how
Can I
can
talk
we,
about, I think balance is a bit of a false sense to strive for. I think, I think it's, I like to use the word integration and successful integration because balance gives potentially the sense that I need to have equal time here, 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 and here. And I want you to figure out, some people like to split their time between work and personal lives in the day. Other people are like, give me my work day, give me my personal life. And I can't. I can't make them work together. It's very personal how we like to sculpt that time. And so, what it's all about is figuring out how each person likes to successfully integrate all the pieces.
okay, I like integrate. Could we also say aligned? I like that word, alignment
Well,
with
alignment,
yourself.
yeah, I think alignment is with values, and that's with intention setting. And so, knowing what's important to you and making sure what you're choosing to give your attention, energy, savings, all your resources, that has to be in alignment with who you are. Because if not, then we suffer something called moral injury, where we're going to have to do something counter to our values. And for anyone who's neurodivergent, it's proven that that's incredibly stressful and taxing. This is probably why I haven't been able to choose to be at certain jobs for a period of time because there was a values clash. And then I need to find a path out because it's so soul crushing and takes just a different kind of injury. It's a wonderful thing to look into and to look at if that could be one of the biggest saboteurs of your performance if you're asked to do something that's not in line with who you are.
I'd love you to speak a little bit more about that, Claire, because I think many of us have been in that position, but it sounds like you're very in tuned. I'm not sure that sometimes all of us are in tuned enough to say, I have to get out of this situation. It's just that
Yeah.
discomfort, not comfortable with it. Whereas you're saying, I recognized it and I did something about it. Can you say more about the signs that you were feeling? Like, that's interesting.
Yeah, sure. And from because we're friends and I've talked to you at length about some of these challenges, that it hasn't always been recognition action. There's been recognition, simmer, simmer, simmer. Um, and never shying away from the question, never shying away from this noticing that both my corporate existence wasn't aligned with who I was, and in my relationship for 23 years, it wasn't aligned with who I was, and it wasn't serving me and my needs as a human being, as a woman. So I think there's the noticing, and you notice discomfort in your body. If you're tuning in, I would love to invite the combination of this rest time in the afternoon and as you check in, so let's just say we're going to take 10 minutes in the afternoon, we're going to step away from our desk and we're going to allow and invite some repose. Hopefully, you have a place where you can do that. And the first thing I want you to do is tune into what's happening in your body. You might be feeling too much caffeine. You might be feeling agitation. You might be feeling stress. And what I want you to do is connect to your breath and feel the weight of your body connecting to the ground. And notice in your body, this body scan meditation is one of the things you can do where you're just tuning in head to toe on every different area in your body. And you might uncover and notice, oh my gosh, I'm holding tension. You might notice it in your jaw, your neck. You might feel it in your chest. Your body is going to be a big clue. And your body can tell you, not only in the stress indications, but it might tell you, look at Celine Dion. I was looking at her last night. There was talking about her stiff person syndrome. And what it said was, I mean, this is a neurological condition, epilepsy, MS, which I also experience, multiple sclerosis. There are numbers of neurological conditions. And what they said about stiff person syndrome was it's related to stress, emotional or social, like or physical, different kinds of stress. It's also related to neurological stimulation. So crowds were really difficult. Lights, audio stress. Imagine Celine's world and how much sensory input she was working with, which was her fuel, but also her torment. And so, really interesting to look at. I think we have to take care of our nervous systems. And we have to look at our sensory sensitivity to understand that and the design to mitigate it. And our world, I was just talking to a U of T researcher yesterday who's working on a book on all of this as well. Our world is more toxic. We have audio assault, we have light wave assault, we've got a lot of energy coming at us in different vibrations. And it's coming at us and it's depleting our energy and building up that stress. And we need to build in rest and restoration to be able to counter all of this toxicity that's coming at us.
I'm so glad you brought that up, Claire, because I want to circle it right back to cortisol, which, as you know, but a lot of others don't, is actually what we call a foundation hormone. Meaning, if it's out of balance, which it is, let's say, in most of us, it literally affects every other hormone. People don't realize, our thyroid function, insulin, progesterone, testosterone, all of these hormones are affected. So if we are going to fix anything first or we have to work on cortisol. And I use adaptogens personally, and I've recommended them to so many of my clients. They are, well-known herbs, reishi mushrooms, types of mushrooms that allow us to adapt to stress, both physical and mental. And I think the adaptogens kind of they do give a platform or a foundation from which then we can stand back, as you're suggesting, and start to make some intentions and decide that maybe we need that rest in the afternoon, or how do we want to structure our day so that it works for us. Because I think it makes a big difference, right, Claire, to come at it from a place of calm and peace. Shall we call it peace?
Yeah, and one of the things I want to just add to our thinking here comes from the work of Dr. Sandra Dalton Smith, and I interviewed her on the Happy Space podcast. She's written a book called Sacred Rest, and she was someone who was getting enough sleep, but she wasn't rested, and she's a physician, so she looked at it from a health perspective, and she thought, what is going on? I'm getting enough hours on the clock of quality sleep, but she discovered there were 7 types of rest and looks into different ways we need to calm our world. And I just invite everyone to check out that work too, because sleep and napping is part of it, but emotional rest, cognitive rest, social rest, sensory rest, these are all places that we need to think about as we cultivate what she talks about, and I love this, creating a mental sanctuary. So what can you create for yourself in a day? And when do you need those pockets of peace? That's another hashtag I use sometimes, pockets of peace. How do you create that in your day to recognize that, we're being fueled and we're going and we're responding, but we need pit stops. If you're going to think of a race crew, you need pit stops where you're actually replenishing, refueling, changing the tires, and then you can go again rather than pushing through.
Absolutely. And really what you're saying, which I think is so true, is if we live our day and have the right mindset that works for us with intentions. I'm also very big on that quality of sleep, because that deep restorative sleep and our REM sleep, those two combined create that waking up feeling rested. And 8 hours on the pillow does not necessarily mean that you're getting that. And again, just going to circle back to cortisol. If it's churning out in the middle of the night, you wake up and you think you have to go to the bathroom, which perhaps you do, but it's really that your adrenals, which sit on top of your kidneys, are being too busy. And so that really disrupts that quality sleep. But let's say it goes back to the day, right? And how you set up your day with that intention. Claire, you mentioned your podcast. I know you have a very successful and very interesting podcast. Tell us more. Highly sensitive people. Where does that fit in?
So for a decade identified as a highly sensitive person and was really looking at performance and how our temperaments play into that. And so the very beginning of the podcast, Happy Space Podcast, HSP, you can see I like
Ah,
wordplay. I like
clever.
a lot of, so
I like it. I like
you like
it.
that? Yeah. So I
I
kind of
do.
embedded that in there. And the first few episodes are definitely focused on highly sensitive people. The first episode talks about how I've reframed Elaine Aron's work slightly, not taking anything out, but just reorganized it as an organizer would want to do, and look at the positives and the challenges that come with that temperament. I've since zoomed out a little bit, and now I look at productivity and inclusivity as a whole. Since I was just mentioning I have MS as well, which is an invisible challenge, I started to explore more fully different challenges that people have and how respecting who we are is really important to ensure we can perform at our best. And so I followed a line of inquiry recently and interviewed late diagnosed autistic women because I wanted to be more informed about autism. I didn't expect, Camille, that would have so many light bulbs going off from me that I followed a diagnosis and just very recently received a diagnosis of autism and ADHD. So I'm well in the neurodivergent space now and fully can claim that label as a useful tool to understand myself more deeply and also you be in the conversations around advocacy on this point. So the podcast looks at all different aspects to understand what will make a more tender world, invite a more tender world, whether it be from a top-down design perspective, looking at how we set up our spaces. I've interviewed architects, neuroscientists, designers, so culture shapers, leaders in the corporate world. How are we designing our environments? And then how can we also be more effective and efficient and loving to ourselves? How can we perform better when we learn how to self-advocate, when we understand ourselves better, when we understand those who are around us more fully? And top down, bottom up, have more people being able to contribute their best to the world.
Claire, you mentioned work style profile before. Can you tell us more about that? I'm not sure exactly what that means.
Oh, Camille, thanks for asking. The work style profile is my offering to people. It's a free survey that you can take. And what it does is it gets you to think about the conditions that invite your best performance. And I've offered this to entrepreneurs, I've worked with this in organizations with people. And no matter where you are, what I've found is that a lot of people are not really in touch with those conditions that invite their best performance, and they're certainly not asking for them. And so this is a survey, it's a Google form, and you complete it in about 15 minutes. And then what I invite you to do in the process is then turn that into a one-page Happy Space work style profile, which you use as your guide to remind yourself, oh my gosh, I'm not a morning person. This is when I like to work best. This is how my communication preference. This is how I like to relate to people. This is how I like to receive feedback. You get to translate everything that was in that questionnaire, which is really comprehensive, and then turn it into one page for yourself, and then something that you might want to share with those with whom you work. So if you're in an organization, you've got a leader in the team, this is one of the most powerful things a team can do is to understand each other and how they like to work best. To me, it's an incredible missing that this has not been part of the work conversation. It's not part of onboarding. It's not part of hiring. But we're in such tug of war now with return to office mandates and tension. If we took a pause and said, well, wait a minute, Camille, I want to know what invites your best work. And you might say, oh, I need a standing desk and I work best in the morning. I need to take a movement break. You're going to know you. And an opportunity to know yourself and articulate it is really powerful. What I think what I would love to do is just share that you can get this work style profile just by going to clairekumar.com. It's right on the homepage, right there, and it's also under Happy Space as the very first drop down work style profile. It's free for everyone to use. And I want to thank you in advance if you complete it, because the bigger picture for this work is to understand, while respecting everybody's privacy, this doesn't go anywhere, but I'm going to get a snapshot of hundreds and if not thousands of people's preferences. So I can go and tell the leaders, you know what I know now is only 9% of people want an 8 a.m. meeting. I can say that now with the survey results I've got. So the more information I have, the more I can enlighten leaders to understand that there's a wealth of ways of working out there. Productivity indeed is personal, and this will be helping that tender world that I was talking about earlier come to fruition.
I love that. Tender, and I like to say compassion, self-compassion, and compassion for the world at large and those around us. Thank you, Claire. I'm going to fill out your work style profile, and I know we will add some links to the bottom of the podcast, so anybody else who would like to do that, I know Claire would welcome that. And Claire, I'll put all of your contact information, because I'm going to guess that lots of people would like to join your podcast and follow you and all the great work that you are doing. And I invite anyone in this community, of course, to go to embracinghormones.com. I do offer some coaching, some counseling. I have some outstanding nutritional products that can create that foundation for health, and a lot of other tips and mindset tips to help us have our hormones, I'm going to use the word, in alignment. So, Claire, thank you very much for being with us today. As always, love your wisdom, your knowledge, your smile, and your expertise.
Haven't we made it, my love? Oh, honey, look how we made it.